White people will never pay the black people back for what they done to us. Never.
What they did to you? I mean,
They done a lot of things wrong. They killed and shot our black people there, and they took the land off them. They took our culture off them. Now they're trying to take our pride, but no ways. They got no chance of getting that. There's too many pride being broken, hated, many hearts been broken over what happened years ago in the older generation. And it's the young generation in days of today that stands up and fight for what happened to the old generation and old people.
History has never just been about what happened. It's about what's been told, and more importantly, what's been left out. For centuries, Black history has been clipped down to pain, chained to struggle, and packaged neatly between slavery and civil rights. But that's not our beginning, and it's certainly not our whole story. Most of us were taught a version of Black history that was incomplete at best. We didn't learn about Queen Zinga, Mansa Musa, or thriving communities like Black Wall Street. We missed out on the brilliance, the innovation, and the power that shaped the world. That's why Black History Unlocked created the history books forgot to say we were more than enslaved, a digital ebook that reclaims the truth and tells the stories you probably didn't learn in school. Click the link in our bio to get your copy today and reclaim the narrative.
Classism is the thing, because we keep making it a race thing, and you run the race.
It is not
thing.
class, it is race.
Listen, a white.
It is not class, it is race.
Are they related?
Yes.
No. Are they related?
More
No,
than we think. More than a rich
no.
black
No.
person do not have the best interests of black people in mind.
That is not
the
necessarily
same way
true.
most poor, the same
Johnny
way,
Cochran did, and he was wealthy.
Some. You name one.
I want him to
Right.
expound
But
on
my
that.
point is, don't go off on the class argument. You know why? Because the weakness of the class argument is if every black person got a PhD and $250,000 a year job, a lot of the problems we suffer from in terms of racism would disappear. They would not. Listen to me. I evaluate children. Stay with me. I evaluate children in some of the most expensive public schools in the country.
Gotcha.
You understand me? The mother is a doctor, the father's a lawyer. Guess what? They still get special educated. They still get medicated just as quickly as a boy in the ghetto whose mother is on public assistance living in public housing. There is no difference. If you're black, you're black. Race burns class in every argument.
Let me ask you a question.
We need racial power, not class transformation.
Let me ask you a question.
That's a distraction and a deception.
Let me ask you a question. Majority of the United States is what?
What?
70% white? Have the percentages changed over the last
Yeah,
couple
they
years?
losing, they dropping.
They dropping fast too. They scared.
Yeah, and the Latinos are.
That's why they tripping.
In terms of numbers.
They tripping for a bunch
and
of
that's why they recruiting Asians to be probationary whites so
they
they
are.
can use them to help keep us in our place.
The same thing that they did with the Italians and the
Yes,
Irish.
yes.
They are.
I've never heard of that before. I've heard white adjacent, but I've never heard
Asians are
probationary white.
probationary whites.
Yes.
They hate
Wow.
black people just as much as white people.
He's right.
Economically, they're just as comfortable, and politically, they're just as conservative.
He's right.
Why do you think they gave them the anti-Asian hate bill? The anti-Asian hate bill was a flower to the Asian community to come and join the white power
got your
structure
back.
and help us
like
keep these Negroes in their
that.
place.
He's
got
right.
tricks.
He's right.
They
Listen
got
to
the
this though.
tricks.
So listen to this though. We all say 65%.
Okay.
That's a fair
Sure.
number
Okay.
to run
Yes, sir.
this. Okay. So if 65% of the population is white, then why is only 1% of them wealthy?
Because you're not accounting for capitalism.
Yeah, that's his
We
favorite
just discussed
line,
racism. That's a capitalism issue. What do we know about capitalism? In order for capitalism to thrive, there has to be a large, freely exploitable population of poor white folks. There is no capitalism without poor white folks. And now, guess what? But guess what? No, not high. That reinforces the race. That reinforces the racism. You want to know why? Because for the poor white person, the only advantage they have over you is their skin color.
Their
Exactly.
motherfucking skin.
And that's why the government has to make sure black people are kept in their place. Because unlike black folks, poor whites will tear this country to shit if they ever lose their white privilege.
Listen to this. You right. I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing with you.
We seen a little bit of it.
I'm agreeing with
We
you.
seen on the
Everything
camera.
you
What they did.
Yes.
We saw the
No.
on
Everything
January
you
6th.
That wasn't
Yes.
poor whites. That wasn't poor whites.
That was
It was
that
a
was
poor
a
whites.
lot of
It was-
disenfranchised
it was-
white
but
people.
Black
Yes,
person
it
got the worst-
was.
But you're right.
So
But
you know
you're
that?
right. But you're
A black
right.
person got the
Majority.
worst prison
But you're right.
sentence.
It was a mix.
Generation.
You're right.
That was not poor whites. A lot
It's
of
a mix.
motherfuckers was from Millburn, New Jersey, Short
But
Hills,
you
New
have poor
Jersey.
whites
A
there
lot
too,
of
though.
motherfuckers
Working
got money.
class poor.
Forget about it. Black people, forget about the past. We have gone through that. Just moved on with your life and stop talking about what has really happened. How many white folks can forget about their past? How many white folks can forget about what happened to them? How many white folks can forget about what they did to black people? It is easy and okay for you people to always come here to remind we blacks we should forget about the past. We should focus on the present. We should move on with our life. But even up to date, slavery was just modernized. Even up to date, black people still suffer racism, suffer racial profiling. Just name what black people, even up to date, I still strongly believe that black people are still going through segregation. So we should still forget about all of that happened in the past, and we should still forget about what is still happening in the present. Anyways, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sonia. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. Credits belong to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in at this episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. And guys, with that being said, let's go watch, and I'll be back with commentaries. Let's go, guys.
I am trying to get real with myself and with other white people, and it is painful work. There's a whole lot of blame toward black people for being the cause of how white people treat them, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. I decided to take a closer look at slavery, since that's such a big topic in the United States. There has been slavery all over the world forever, and all colors of people have enslaved other colors of people for as long as we know about. But the transatlantic slave trade, in which Europeans brought African and Caribbean black people to the United States to be free labor in the new colonies before they were really the United States, is a whole different story of slavery. Slavery historically had to do with who won and who lost a war, who was convenient, who stumbled by at the wrong time, and so it wasn't specifically race-based. So why did these white Europeans choose black people to enslave? Because their physical differences from whites made it easier to create lies that they were biologically inferior. They invented science to defend this. It was easier to make these people who looked so different from us less human. And that lie made it easier to justify torture, rape, family separation, and death on a massive scale. And it made them, quite frankly, easier to identify if they tried to escape. The legacy didn't disappear when slavery ended. Eugenics came along and fed the racial superiority notion of whiteness, and it influenced the Nazi narrative along with the racial one. It carried over into segregation, Jim Crow, housing, policing, incarceration, education, all of that. If we're ever going to fix what's broken, we need to get curious enough to name how it got broken in the first place. White people need to get curious so we can say no more, not on my watch.
I want every white person in this room who would be happy to be treated as this society in general treats our citizens, our black citizens. If you, as a white person, would be happy to receive the same treatment that our black citizens do in this society, please stand. You didn't understand the directions. If you white folks want to be treated the way blacks are in this society, stand. Nobody's standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
You better shut your white mouth. I'm not kidding you. I know some of you was raised in the deep South and you was raised by prejudiced people and bigoted people. You better get that out of your system. You better get it out of your system. It'll cause you to suffer right along with those masters. It'll cause you to suffer right along with them. These are God's people. And I know that there's wicked in white races and wicked in black races and all that. I'm not justifying none of that stuff. I'm just saying God knows what happened to the black race. He knows how they wound up over here, and God is going to reimburse the black people for all their trouble and all their labor. You watch what I tell you. Watch what I tell you.
Let's talk about this story out of South Africa because it says everything about hypocrisy and white supremacy. A white farm owner and his workers are on trial for allegedly murdering 2 black women who were unarmed, women who were simply collecting old dairy products. And after they allegedly murdered them, they fed their bodies to pigs. Think about that for a second. They fed their bodies, human beings, to animals. The part that pisses me off the most with this is these are the same kind of people who look at black folks in Africa or America or anywhere else and call us savages. But tell me this, what is more savage than shooting 2 hungry women and then treating their bodies like trash? What's more barbaric than covering it up by feeding their bodies to animals? This isn't just a crime. This is a reflection of a long, ugly history. If you remember, colonizers stole land, they massacred villages, and they called it civilization. Slave masters whipped, raped, and lynched black bodies, and then had church the next morning. Apartheid made people strangers on their own land. And then when we resisted, they called us violent. See the pattern? Whenever black people act out of survival, we're branded as criminals. When white supremacists murder in cold blood, it's protecting property. It's isolated. It's lost in the news cycle somehow. And then you got politicians like Trump, who push this lie of a so-called genocide against white farmers, while ignoring the everyday violence against black South Africans. That's not just hypocrisy. That's propaganda trying to flip the script and make the oppressor the victim. You want to know the truth? Black people are not savages. What's in our blood is resilience, creativity, and survival against all odds. But what's in their history, their very foundation of white supremacy, is violence, exploitation, and the dehumanization of others. That's the real savagery. So the next time someone dares to point the finger at us, remind them, we didn't invent this cycle of brutality. They did. And we've been surviving it, exposing it, and rising above it for centuries. Now let me ask you this. When are we going to let them stop defining the narrative and start forcing the world to see the truth for what it is?
Or 200 years ago, when the blacks were slaves, did they ever go to Washington, D.C. and have a rally 200 years ago to protest against slavery? Did they? No. What did they do? Well, a lot of good people in the plantations would say, hey, it's wintertime. Let us help build a church for you, dear folks. And they loved them and taught them how to read so they can read the Bible. And here's what the blacks did about 150 years ago. They humbled themselves. They prayed. They sought God's face and they turned from their wicked ways. And God made slavery illegal through several white presidents, right?
I don't even know what to say. I don't.
What did you just say?
I said that one of the big demographic things that's moving our country right now is that the United States is moving from being a majority white population to a minority white population.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still be the largest minority in the United States. But
and how does that make you feel as white people?
It doesn't bother us at all, but we know that it bothers some white people.
Why do you think it bothers some white people?
There's a fear. There's a fear. They bought into the idea that white is superior, so that's the white supremacy part. They bought into the narrative, the nonsense that this country was founded on white principles, ignoring the Native American influence and the Latino influence that's always been here. and negating the harm of the black influence that was, brought in by slavery.
Yeah.
And you ignore all of those things. You conveniently create this narrative in your mind that the U.S., the Constitution, the Revolutionary War, all of that was white people.
Mm-hmm.
And negating the immigrant part of it, negating the immigrants that continued to come over. And white is not a culture. It's just the color of the skin that happens to be, for people in the North, because we don't have that evolutionary growth.
Not even that, because white, Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants didn't even used to be considered white.
Right.
So
yes.
it's always
my
been.
Grandparents on my dad's side were either immigrants or born and raised in the Boston area. And Boston, back at the turn of the previous century, the 19th century, the 18th to 19th to 20th century, it was very diverse in Boston, extremely diverse, and not a happy diversity, right? Yeah. They were, and most of those cultures, because I will say cultures, were fighting against each other. Yeah. And my grandfather was English, UK, Welsh, and my grandmother was Swedish, and that wasn't really looked at positively at the time.
Yeah, and Grandma Haglund was born in Sweden, right?
Born in Sweden, came over here around 2 or 3.
Yeah. And that's who you're named after, right?
Yes.
Linnea. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there were segments of each of those cultures that were fighting. I'm sure there were segments that were probably getting along well, but still. And just like now, there are big segments of population that are making this transition with, and there are some that are, who knows what their motivations are. I'm sure it varies person to person to the extent of whatever, but I got to think that there's some type of subconscious, maybe guilt feelings, some worry that what we did to the Native Americans, the black population, is that they're going to do to us, which is, I mean.
Do you have any like short pieces of wisdom or advice that you would say to a white person who you would say is coming from a place of fear or guilt or shame?
Instead of fear, try stepping outside that fear and get to know someone who is not white.
Yeah.
Because, in my family, there's a lot of integration of cultures. Yeah. And by that I mean people married outside of whiteness. Yeah. And so that exposure, you learn differently. Oh, well, that's interesting. And I think that we've tried to share that with the children, with all of you children. You're not children, all of our children growing up. Taking them out of the country when we could, right? Let's learn a new language. Let's learn a few vocabulary in this language because we're going to go visit there.
Even on the smallest of budgets, you made that.
Right.
Yeah,
we tried.
And another thing is to try to distinguish between, for the people that you're listening to that are stoking your fear, try to distinguish between those people who just haven't worked it out in their heads yet and those people who have an agenda, and the racism is not necessarily what's driving them. There's maybe some greed behind it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
what about your parents? Obviously, they had a different lens, but I also feel pretty lucky that I don't believe they were bigots either. And I think they actually did a lot of advocacy work.
My parents or his parents?
Both of your parents.
I was going to say, your dad was in World War II, and I think being stationed overseas, that he developed a lot of empathy for a lot of different. He was very empathetic.
He was in the South Pacific. Yeah. He was part of the time working as a medic's aide in the hospital ship, which meant he was an orderly cleaning up after horrendous things. And then he was in Japan briefly,
Yep.
During the, I don't know what,
And Bonnie's
whatever you call
brothers
it.
too. All three
Right.
of her brothers.
Right.
You know,
Grandma
that
Bonnie's
changes
brothers.
people
Yeah.
when you are in the midst of and you're fighting together.
Yep.
Not that that's a good way to learn about other people, but it definitely changed them. And I
Well-
never encountered bigotry from them. You know, you can kind of hear it in some people. They'll just say something aside. Well, you know, when I was a student at Bradley, people would complain. We have very few African American population, but some students would complain about them in the dorms, saying, you know how they are. They stay up late. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like
maybe they're
like
not
you
welcome.
don't.
Yeah.
Right? Or like you don't. I never knew a student who didn't stay up late. What are you talking about?
Well, and Grandma Bonnie, your mom, also was a teacher. Right?
And going back earlier in her life, they lived very poorly. I
Yeah.
mean, Grandpa, her dad was working as a farmer's helper. So
Like a migrant farmer,
Yeah.
a white migrant farmer. And my mom grew up very poor, very poor.
And she
in the West.
but she met Grandpa
And
Art.
she left home at 18 to go be a secretary in New York City from Washington State to New York City.
How very musical theater.
I mean, she never did really tell that story of what prompted her to go so far, but more power to her. I guess that was the big city that everybody wanted to go to back in the 40s, you know.
Plus,
And then
she had lived on the coast, on the West Coast.
Yeah,
and
might as well try the East
Tacoma
Coast.
and Seattle.
Some
and,
curiosity.
Yeah, and a farm, and grew up very poor, and maybe she thought she could make her.
And then she met Grandpa.
They worked in the same company. Yeah, and then her grandmother back in Seattle was sick, and she went back home to take care of her, and my dad followed her. So romantic.
How romantic.
He quit his job. And
That's a
followed her.
Tom Hanks movie right there.
He was pretty romantic to her.
Yes.
Much to our chagrin.
They had 5 kids.
And my dad's family, they rented farmland.
Yep.
In a situation that had some aspects of feudalism.
I mean, it's been a struggle for them
Yeah.
for as long as we've known them.
But I mean, at the time that he was growing up, that the curve was allowing farmers in that situation to put aside money to, get out of debt and to build
community.
The community, was very interconnected.
We come from
traded work, they traded machinery.
We come from places where you are not alone.
White women are making comments about me in my videos, so I want to make some comments too about white women in history. Let's do it. Remember that time y'all were so upset at black women for being raped by y'all husbands that you unalived their babies and sold them? Remember that time that you called a whole rally of people on a little black boy because he didn't want you? Do you remember that time you then came back and said you were lying about it? No? Do you remember the time that you pretended that you were not stealing black women's body shapes by buying these huge corsets with these large gowns at the bottom to imitate somebody else's body shape? No. Remember that time the government had to make a law for you in order to get black women from wearing their natural hair because somebody just so happened to be jealous of it. So they were forced to wear scarves, but then you also were inspired by that you started wearing scarves on your head. No? No? Okay. Let me know if y'all still want to make comments, because I got comments too.
I think that the very survival of white people necessitates that they project genetic inferiority on people of color because it is they who really are aware that they are genetic recessive and perhaps genetically inferior to people of color. And I am not saying this to to call the condition of skin whiteness to say, well, no, white people are inferior. I'm not saying it for that purpose, but I think that it is of prime importance for the majority of people in the world to understand why it is that white people have to, the effective majority, large numbers of white people, have to move in a hostile, in an aggressive way against people of color, and have to constantly focus on it's you who's genetically inferior, because they realize that there's something wrong with their genetic status. Find by geneticists and dermatologists that the inability to produce the skin pigment of melanin or melanin pigment is described as albinism. And I think that white people, even though most white people are not consciously understanding their problem in genetics, they are certainly aware that they are genetically dominated by people of color. That's why it was a statement, one drop of black blood makes you black.
People don't forget histories like slavery and segregation, but they can relate to them in differently over time. Do you guys hear what I said? People don't. So for those of you that keep saying, oh, black people forget about it. Slavery was a long time ago. Why are people still talking about slavery? Do you people still need to remind yourself about slavery? People don't forget about slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, redlining. People don't forget about racial profiling. People don't forget about you going to their environment and asking them if they belong here or not. People don't forget about you telling them, why are you driving so much expensive car? Where did you get that money from as a white person to a black person? People don't forget about that. Events like transatlantic slave trade, slavery in the United States, Jim Crow law, and civil rights movement are just personal memories that are foundational history. They are what? Foundational history. They shaped institution, housing, education policy, and web gaps. They are taught in schools, discussed in media, and remembered in families. Their effects did not end overnight. Many inequality trace back to those eras and are still happening in present days. So it is impossible for people to forget about history. Every group with a major history, trauma, example, war, colonization, trends to preserve the memories. In common sense, forgetting isn't realistic, and honestly, it is usually describable because history helps people understand how the present came to be. So, are black people enjoying the presence right now that they are in America? Are black people worldwide enjoying what these people have done to us? And they just want us to wake up and forget about it. They just want us to wake up and erase everything from schools and make it look like nothing ever happened. They just want it to make it look like, oh, it's not racism. Black people can also be racist, blah, blah, blah. People do not forget about racism. You cannot beat a child and tell that child not to cry. You cannot. There are things that you as a mother and as a father or as a father will do to your own biological children. They will never forget that memory. They will never erase it out of their head. Do you get my point? There are strokes of canes that my mom gave me when I was growing up with her, that even up till date, I can never forget it. Can you people just understand that scenario? It's not possible. So for those ones keep saying, oh, black people exaggerated too much, that is why they never need reparation, blah, blah, blah. They were not the enslaved one, east, west, north, and south. Have it at the back of your mind that you yourself, you cannot forget a lot of things that has happened to you, be it negatively or positively. Talk more of the one that strip you off from different things. Strip you off from good education, strip you off from good food, make you look like you're not worth it, you're not even supposed to be human. You want us to forget about history. Even if not forgotten, how people carries it involved, it can become less central to identify for some individuals over generation. Focus can shift more towards present achievement and future goals. Painful history can be reframed into resilience, culture, and pride. Interracial and global perspective can burden how people interpret it. For many, holding on to history is important because it honors those who have suffered and resisted. It helps those who prevent repetition, never again. It explains current inequality and didn't appear randomly. It fuels activism and accountability. Others push for less focus on the past because that's for those ones that choose to forget about it. For those ones that are blacks that said, okay, they don't even care about whatever happened in slavery. They are doing that because they believe constant focus can limit progress or mindset. They want to identify to be less tied to oppression. They emphasize personal urgency over historical faming. No black person, like or group, are likely to forget such defining history. It's not possible. So stop making it look like maybe when black people are saying it, black people don't know what they are saying. Black people are overreacting. Black people just want to talk. Black people just want to blab. Black people just want to do this. Black people just want to do that. History is history. The pains are still fresh. We still have descendants of the enslaved. We still have the histories in different museums. So what are you saying? How are you saying we should forget about it and just move on? If you're okay and you don't want to be listening to anything regarding history, fine. But you can't tell black people, especially as a white person, that knew that your people contributed to every single suffering that we are going through, to just forget about it. It is high time you learn to focus on your own self and try to forget about a lot of things that is happening between you and your spouse. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comment section. Credits belong to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. And guys, with that being said, with no further ado, I do like I always say in my videos, I'm going to be saying bye, and I'll see you guys in my next one. For now, bye guys. I love you guys. Mwah.